How's that sound, Paul? Good. Thank you. How about this? Good. Well, good morning. No smoke, no flooding, no wind. A little moment of ease in our Dharma Center. The outer conditions are very conducive. No doubt there are hurricanes and earthquakes and muggings happening in the mind in this room, but over those we have a little more agency. The topic I'm going to explore today is the experience of being overwhelmed and of being stressed by outer and inner events. One of the one of the tools that comes down to us from the time of the Buddha is the practice of taking refuge. Refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, Sangha. Is anybody here for the first time today? I imagine so. Oh, a bunch. My goodness, welcome. Oh, I'd love to know what got you here. So I hope this is a good fit and that it's very useful to you. Most often people think of the refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha as maybe as a religious something, kind of like in my childhood I had the creed, I believe in this and I believe in that. And that's one way to use them. But I don't know, more usefully, more fundamentally, reminding ourselves of the refuge is it's really the only sane thing to do. In what can we take refuge? My wife has family in Miami, and they'll be fine. They're in good, solid places. But I just heard the water is 5 feet deep in places in Miami already. The surge, and it's just barely above sea level. And if you were taking refuge in your property or your things, that would be a mistake. If we were taking refuge in health, that's pretty uncertain. Where could we possibly take refuge that could be useful to us in times of great duress? Taking refuge in the Buddha doesn't mean taking refuge in a fellow who lived 2,500 years ago. It means, though we can be inspired by his journey, but it more fundamentally means taking refuge in that which is awake, that in us which is awake. We could call it the Christ consciousness or the Buddha nature or the Krishna consciousness or the heart of Kuan Yin. That's a place we can take refuge that makes sense. And then refuge in the Dharma, there's an elegant, exquisite teaching on how to live our lives and how to wake up, how to become more compassionate and loving and less reactive. And that's one meaning for the Dharma, the Buddha Dharma, the teachings. But more fundamentally, keep using that word fundamentally, it's taking refuge in things as they are, which would include, natural, quote, disasters are very much on our radar right now, and they're normal, right? Probably I'm I'm a climate change. I believe the 99.2% of scientists who say there's a climate change happening. And no doubt the hurricanes are getting more powerful and the fires are more. But they are normal. It's what happens here on the earth. Earthquakes are normal. Sickness, old age, decay, and death are normal. And so to take refuge in that reality, in the reality of impermanence, is quite a relief. And then the Sangha, taking refuge in community, we can take refuge in our community of practice and in the memory of those who practiced and awakened. But more, what would I call it? I was here 2 weeks ago yesterday with Joanna Macy, and you'll hear more of that today. But we are the living earth. Right? We are the earth. We are the part of the earth that's come into being and is conscious and that can reflect back on life. But we're not separate, and we're not going to be here long. We are the earth breathing right now. So that's our community. That's our real community, which includes the whales and the insects and the bacteria, and it's us. That's our family. And we've been evolving in this way for 4.2 billion years or something. So that's kind of a sensible place to take refuge, I think, in our true family, which then includes those we would think of as the enemy or the adversary, that they are our family. So if you wish, I invite you to join me in this modern rendition of these ancient chants, and we'll do them a couple of times and see how it goes. Is that too loud? Can't tell from here at all. I take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya. Dharma, I take refuge in the Dharma, the way of understanding and love. Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya. I take refuge in the Sangha, the community of mindful harmony. Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya. Again, I take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya. If the earth is one mysterious living organism, then this breathing that we do is essential to the earth. Our green brothers and sisters who build their leaves and branches and trunks out of carbon dioxide just learned that a few years ago. It kind of blew my mind. They bring in the carbon from outside and they weave that into trees, sequestering carbon dioxide. So they breathe out oxygen, waste gas, and then we breathe it in. And then, because we have a circulatory system, every cell in our body is bathed in oxygen. Quite something. Without our ever knowing it. And from at least the time of the Buddha, human beings have been sitting down and paying attention to this. What's real in life? One thing that's real is breathing in and breathing out. Nothing to believe, nothing to cling to, just there are sensations in the chest and abdomen, in the nostrils, the back. And you'll notice that breathing, like everything else since the Big Bang, the great flash, each breath has a beginning and an ending. And if we pay really close attention, we can notice that the beginning comes out of nowhere. It just starts. Comes to fullness, declines, and then disappears. Our bodies have evolved with sense doors which allow us to attune to the world around us and therefore survive and thrive. Among the sense doors is hearing. Notice how sounds, including this voice, come, they appear out of nowhere, then they disappear. And everywhere that we direct awareness in this miraculous body, we discover life. Life in the feet, in the hands, in the face. And there's another sense door, which is the mind, which, as the ear is sensitive to sounds, the mind door is sensitive to thoughts and emotion, plans, memories, stories. So many of you here today for the first time, and what I'm about to say may be the most important thing for you that I say today, which is, don't try to empty your mind. Don't try to stop it. It's a very common, maybe utterly ubiquitous misunderstanding. We have a habit, we humans, of going to war with things. We have a war on some drugs, and a war on some people, and a war on cancer. Wars don't seem to work very well, externally or internally. It's much more useful to instead make the intention to be aware of what's happening. So then when your mind wanders off and you notice it, it's success. You're having a success, waking up. Even if it wanders off for 5 minutes, then there's a moment of something utterly miraculous and mysterious, which is awareness recognizes that thinking is happening. This awareness is what is perhaps a unique human gift, knowing what's happening, the one who knows, that which knows. So when you can, come home, stay with the breath, with this coming and going of the tide of your life. But when the mind wanders, then you'll be unconscious for a while. You'll be lost in the dream of the past or the fantasy of the future. You'd be lost in emotion. But then something happens, something wakes up. Awareness springs into being. And so choosing to come back to breathing or to come back to body sensations and we practice with utmost compassion. Whenever we encounter suffering of any kind, We soften the heart, open, remain present. When we take refuge in the Dharma, in the way things actually are, it frees us so that our meditation time can be a time of discovery and uncovering. It doesn't need to be a time of trying to make things different. This means that there's always the possibility of the ultimate vacation right now. Don't have to go anywhere, don't have to try to have fun, don't have to try to be entertained, don't have to try to improve yourself. And letting coming home to the sensations of breathing be a kind of guide for you, or handrail, point of orientation. in this moment, the reality of human life is presenting itself. The mind, in particular, your mind, is doing what it does. Maybe it's filled with some emotion, happiness, joy, bliss, sadness, anger, despair. What a relief to not have to do anything about it. If it's really unpleasant, to bear with that unpleasant, to suffer it consciously. If it's really pleasant, to delight in it, to experience it, that flavor of mind. If there's some acute pain or some chronic pain, to acknowledge the reality of that and to suffer that consciously. Or perhaps the body is being visited by the delicious, pleasant flows of energy and sensation that come sometimes with meditation. To fully experience that our task or our blessing or our opportunity is actually to fully incarnate, to really become fully human. To the degree that we are unable, unwilling to be present, that's a region of life that we can't experience, we can't be present for. So how intimate can you become with this mysterious breathing in and breathing out? Can you become intimate enough to notice how the beginning is a distant past by the time it gets to the middle? Can you perhaps notice there's no such thing as a breath? There's just this nanosecond of a breath. Please invite awareness to be awake and alive in your feet and your legs. You don't need to make anything happen. It's just noticing buttocks, pelvis, back, sides, chest, abdomen. Shoulders, fingers, hands, arms, neck, face, eyes, scalp. And notice particularly this region that you think of as your eyes. Let your eyes move around a little bit inside their beautifully lubricated sockets. And then noticing the intention that happens in the mind to open these eyes, to peel back those eyelids. They don't open by themselves. They open because of an intention or a willing. And in the next minute or so, let your eyes open. And then notice how seeing happens and how awareness, visual awareness arises. Seeing. Seeing objects. And then perhaps your body is like this one. It's a little achy, maybe from sitting still or maybe from just getting old. Then notice how it might like to move and then give it freedom to do that, but stay awake. Notice. This is not a training or not a practice that happens only on the meditation seat. It's what we do driving, painting. Getting to know a lot about painting. I painted my house in the last week. Quite fun and exhausting. I came to think of the airless paint sprayer as a magic wand. It would go from dusty, dirty blue to this lovely green, just quite something. Of course, then it oversprays onto things and you have to clean them. That's what you... So, alive. Who experiences a consciousness which is more at ease and relaxed than when you walked in? Look around. This is why it would be wise to do this for 45 minutes every day. Why not? I've noticed in recent weeks or months, either before Jim does the movement or after, lots of people leave. And I know there's important things to do in your life, but I encourage you to stay. You might hear something you've never heard before. You might discover that there's something to, you might be transformed. Among the things I'm going to share with you this morning is an 8-minute, it's a video clip, but I forgot the projector at home, but the audio is fine, of Joanna Macy speaking about a prophecy for our time, which I find incredibly freeing. So stay if you can. And just a word about the community. Joanna talks about the three great revolutions. There was the agrarian, the learning how to plant things. Then there was the Industrial Revolution, which has taken us to the brink of calamity. And we're now in what she calls the Great Turning, which is a revolution of consciousness, an evolution of consciousness, where we discover that we really are interconnected, and where the habits, the bad habits we have of racism and of hoarding, small percentages of the culture having great amounts of wealth, and of the tremendous isolation we feel, because we've fallen under the spell of the individual. We all think we're individuals, and the Buddha's teachings have been talking about that for millennia, that there is our individual self, but we're part of something bigger. And one of the ways that we wake up to that being part of something bigger is in community, is in this community. So I'm going to invite you to participate. I am inviting you. You can do that by being here. You can do that by contributing financially, very important. One of the ways that we overcome our fearfulness is like, oh, I can share. We have our fancy iPad. Is the iPad out? Yeah, we have our fancy, you can use your card. We're very sophisticated. We've come into the 21st century. You can donate by card and you can also donate online. So Jim, would you like to take the helm, please?
Okay. Testing. Yes, I'm here. Standing. I'm still here. So, one of the inspirations of Joanna Macy's teachings is how we are part of the earth, and but we forget. So how do we learn to remind ourselves? And one thing that I've discovered is Qigong to remind me that I'm in touch with the earth when I'm standing, and I can feel it. And then stopping to feel that connection starts the memory process. Oh yeah, I'm not separate from this earth. I'm connected to it. And there's a flow of energy coming up from the earth every second, moving through my body, organizing my nervous system in a new way. This is a new experience. This is the first time I've taken a breath in this second. And release what I don't need. And that sense of connection that Robert was talking about. I'm drawing in energy that's been created in a certain form by the plant world, and I'm releasing energy that I don't need that's really crucial to the plant world. And the plant world is really crucial to the animal world, and the animal world is really, and it goes on and on and on. Fields within fields within fields of connections. So if I start the Shibashi routine and just lift my arms up, my body is telling my scattered mind that yes, again, yeah, it's true again. I am drawing energy from the earth, and I'm contributing to the atmosphere when I release. It's not a belief, it's a experiential investigation. Can I experience the new energy flowing in? Can I experience my contribution to the larger world? And that's a reminder that I can open to the larger world. And what happens to my mood when I remember to contribute to the wider world? Remember that I'm connected. Remember that I'm supported and that I'm supporting. And lifting overhead, I can use my imagination and create a rainbow across the sky. How does that change my mood? To be supported by this image and to share that with you in your practice and see how it supports you. And then what does this building filled with people practicing mindfulness, how does that support the rest of the planet? Lifting up, separate the clouds, separating the clouds of delusion that we're separate. We're connected to this whole atmosphere, to this whole planet. And we have the ability to twist and turn on a simple axis, right down the center of the body, opening to one side, opening to the other side, embracing our connections in all directions. That little yogi down there knows how to turn. Draw your arms back. See if your shoulder still has full revolution in it. Might not always be so. And on the rising breath, we lift. On the exhale, we release back to the center, rise again, turning impermanence into a dance. How does that support my practice? How does that support our practice? And turning to gaze at the moon, again we find these flexible tendons and muscles, and nerves capable of controlling the speed of our turn, the direction of our turn, the rhythm of our breath. And then feeling the results of slow breathing and slow movement. It's very different than answering the cell phone. The feeling in the body is very different. Press across. Joanna Macy has a book called Active Hope, which is something I turn to when my hopelessness and despair gets too strong. I remember that I forgot. And reaching across, I can use my imagination to create active hope. Here's a cloud up here. Here's a shadow down here. How does it feel in this nervous system to create an image of a shadow following a cloud, linking the heaven and the earth? When I feel that I have no agency, just pull out my cloud and the shadow, and it dissolves hopelessness. I do it with all of you, it has tremendous resonance. It sets up a whole different memory of this particular move. I can see my hand, but I can also see all of you. You're kind of blurry, but you're still there. And that memory gets into my nervous system, and it's an ally the next time I'm overcome with despair. Thank you. Reach out and splash in the sea. We don't have floods here. We have a different level of the watery element. It's just in our imagination right here. And we ride the waves. Then we watch, check in. What are the feelings in the body when we pretend to be riding the waves? What's the response of the body? Opening the arms, turning the wrists, playing with the waves. And turning, stepping out on the other foot, bracing ourselves, rising with the toe. The toe works as a support on the ground, and then it lifts up, defies gravity. There's agency in the feet and the lower leg. There's agency in the shoulders. We ride the waves. Opening the arms again. And back to the center. And to get more playful, we let the dragon rise from the sea. And the dragon is not a omen of misfortune. The dragon is simply the power of the waves, the power of the storm, the power of the wind to pollinate and refresh and cleanse and purify. Let the dragon rise from the sea. Then spread our wings and fly with the cranes. staying in touch with that feeling of agency. We do have impact on this living organism. We're creating harmony with everyone else in the room and within our own nervous system. Turning the wheel. One image organizes all these nervous systems together. Changing direction. And then an image from way back in my memory of kids on the playground playing with a ball, bouncing the ball underneath their knee. I don't think kids play this anymore. They're on their cell phones. I didn't do it much, but it seemed like the girls on the playground did this a lot. Bouncing the ball under their knee. Okay, drawing to the center, organizing all this experience we call Shibashi, Form 1. It's just a long reminder of our connection with the earth, drawing energy in, gladly releasing what we don't need, establishing again our connection with the planet. And then coming to stillness. And there's no reason not to feel the connection with no gestures. What are the results of all this movement? One result might be clarity. Clarity of our connection with the earth, clarity concerning our connection to everyone else in the room. Relaxation of muscles that have been held tight in resistance to things we don't want, or getting exposed to people we don't want to be with, or being separated from people we want to be with. All that stuff during the week causes contractions and constrictions. And just for a moment, we release all that. So this one form that has a name and a tradition and a history can be used as a container for our experience, a ritual, a holder of our connections. So once more, sink, open to the side. Gather all this experience. Plant it in the earth. It's a seed. There are karmic consequences to what we just did. All those blessings that we experienced are flowing out in all directions. So watch for them. Thank you.
Good morning, Sangha. And good morning to everybody out in internet land, too. My name is Avi. I'm the community coordinator at PIMC. That's my role here. And I'm here to give you a few announcements about ways in which you can deepen your connection with this community. Robert had talked about his invitation to have you give to this place if it nourishes you, and That's what I try and do here. I try and be a good host, and I try and give all of you ways in which you can experience this place at a deeper level, with more connection with other members of the Sangha, with more learning, with more opportunities for spiritual growth. Going along with that, for those of you who are new, we have a potluck that is happening after this, and it's always interesting to me to hear from people that they feel shy about going down into the potluck or to hospitality because they don't know anybody. And I would love if you would come up to me afterwards and you feel shy, I would love to connect you up with the Dharma buddy for the morning who would be willing to sort of like answer your questions and be somebody that you can talk to so you don't feel shy. You are really in a room full of friends here. This is safe space. And for those of you who feel like this community calls to you and you want to deepen your engagement with it, we do need volunteers to help with gardening and keeping up the beautiful landscape work that we have on the outside. We need people to help with hospitality, where we serve snacks and coffee and tea at the end of every Sunday Dharma talk. It's a great way to be of service, and it's a great way to get to know people. Think of it not as coming to do another task, but as getting to know people while getting some tasks done, because there's all kinds of things that need to happen to keep a place like this going. We are also looking for a volunteer coordinator, somebody to take an active role in soliciting volunteers and coordinating them. I'm doing a little bit of that, and other people who have been here for a long time are taking pieces of that. It would be nice to have somebody to coordinate that if you feel called to do that. We have some other things that are going on. So we've got a bunch of classes that are coming up. Next weekend, we have a full weekend of Tibetan Buddhist teachings from a Tibetan Lama named Khenpo Tswang, who has been teaching here annually for about 3 years. If you are really interested in Tibetan Buddhism, very, very deep teachings. It is Buddhism. It's a different flavor of Buddhism, and I've experienced some of those teachings, and I find them quite powerful. The following weekend after that, maybe 2 weekends from that. I don't know, on the 23rd, we have Vinnie Ferraro, who was one of the founders of the Dharma Punks movement, who will be coming up here and doing a day of mindfulness. Then we have 2 classes that are coming up in October. We have the Foundations of Mindfulness, and we have the Eightfold Path. And these are foundational teachings here that really give you an excellent grounding on what it is that we do here when we sit in meditation every Sunday. It gives you a really excellent context and foundation for what it all means and what it's all about. We also have today, we've got Dharma consultations. If you have questions about your practice and you need some time with a Dharma counselor to work through them, Kate, who is over there with the raised hand, we'll have time for 3 Dharma consults after the Dharma talk today. I'd like to let you know that I am available in my office Monday through Thursday in the mornings. Email me or see me or call me if you have any questions about this place. I'd also like to let you know too that if you go to the website, there is a connections forum that is specific to this community that you can sign up for if you want to be in the loop about, I don't know, whatever is on anybody's mind in the Sangha. Is there anything that I've forgotten? What's that? Retreats. There are 2 retreats coming up. One, Hollyhock and Brighton-Bush, and those are coming up in October? I didn't write any of this down. I forgot. And so I'm doing this. I'm flying by wire. Okay, so we've got 2 retreats coming up. Please look at the website for more information on that. Thank you very much for your time. Have a blessed day.
We haven't mentioned our collection of clothing and any useful items for people who are moving off the streets. This is a place to help with our excess. Thank you for being here. It is a profound, unimaginable privilege to be able to sit here and share the Dharma with you. It's very strengthening for me. And without you, I wouldn't get to do that. There's a quality of sanity and sometimes even wisdom that comes when I get to play this role. I mean, it's been a long time, almost, I don't know, since 1978. But the number of times that I've come to this seat, we've only been in this building 13 years, but it's funny, it's getting to be a long time already. But the number of times that I've been struggling in my own self-pity, madness, the middle of a divorce at one point, a custody battle, and depression and weirdness, and to get into this seat and to speak of the Dharma and the quality of sanity comes. It's quite blessed in that way. Thanks to Ruth Dennison and to the Buddha. In 1971, I applied from India to do a master's in environmental studies, which was at York University in Toronto. They had an experimental, amazing program. One had to write one's own plan of study, and the professors would only respond if 2 or 3 people got together and said, "We want you to help us with this project." So there weren't courses, we had to make them happen. And I was motivated to do this because I had spent 5 years, I worked on freighters and traveled in Southeast Asia and lived in Australia for a year, and I feel sad. I saw environmental destruction happening on such a massive scale that it was really disturbing to me. And of course that's only accelerated since then with this industrial financial growth machine that we are part of. So I applied to this program. I was in London actually, and I came across a copy of it was a little magazine called The Ecologist, 50 pages or 45 pages, and it said it was a plan to save the Earth. Of course, the Earth is perfectly safe, right? But it's a plan to save humans and the other large mammals. And that set off this impulse. So anyway, I did this program, and I had to come up with a plan, and I had 4 questions, 2 questions and 2 sub-questions. And they persist to this day as my questions. The first one was, if we really are part of the Earth, really, how is it that we don't know that? How have we lost, where's the feedback loop that reminds me? And then practically, what can I do to reconnect? And the second question, if we really are part of each other, if we are one living organism, how is it that we don't know that? How can we treat each other as we do? How can we create enemies and then kill them? And what can we do about that? And it was in that program that I was first introduced to Western psychotherapy, and that began my professional exploration of the 2 strands of Western psychotherapy, the healing of the individual, and couples and community, and the Eastern model, the Asian model of how do we heal ourselves and the connection with each other, and how do we come into real realization of our interbeing. One of the things that I've noticed in myself and in others is that as we meditate, as we become more sensitive, as we deepen into ourselves, we run into what the Buddha called dukkha, the unsatisfactoriness. We run into remarkable amounts of pain. And as we are connected, I've been finding it interesting the last few days, watching this monster come across the Atlantic. And we now know it's coming, right? We can watch it from space and fly airplanes into it. So the sufferings of the planet, the sufferings of Bangladesh. I mean, lots of Bangladesh is still underwater. They don't have FEMA. So we can, as we become more sensitive and can live in the present moment more, we can easily become we become more compassionate. Right? The Buddha described compassion as the sensitive heart's natural trembling when faced with suffering. So we're faced with suffering and our hearts tremble, and then we can get so overwhelmed. So whatever shall we do? In the one direction of the Buddhist model says, well, we really must develop equanimity. And you'll hear Joanna Macy speak of it beautifully, that we have to develop wisdom into the interconnectedness of all things. and into the interbeing of all things, and to realize that from our greater self, everything's perfectly safe. Not from our individual self, but our individual self is a temporary home. But how is it? How might we broaden the? That's a poem I didn't think of so just now. How is it that we might broaden the field of our love and identification? Come on, there we go. This is a poem, or a prose poem by Einstein. A human being is part of a whole called by us universe. It's quite a line, isn't it? A human being is part of a whole called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. She experiences her thoughts and feelings as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of consciousness. This delusion is a sort of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. A human being is part of a whole called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of consciousness. This delusion is a sort of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. There's another poem. Here it is. It's called A Brief for the Defense. Before I go there, if we're going to fully incarnate and if we're going to be fully alive, we will encounter extraordinary beauty. Springtime, babies, grandchildren, poetry, Mozart. Earthquakes, betrayal, fires, sickness, old age, decay, death, according to the Buddha. We're going to get the whole enchilada, right? If we're going to be fully alive, if we're going to fully engage. So how is it that we can develop a capacity, a heart, a consciousness, which can actually bear the magnitude of the suffering? And this is a poem about that, in a way. Sorrow everywhere, slaughter everywhere. If babies are not starving someplace, they are starving somewhere else, with flies in their nostrils. But we enjoy ourselves because that's what the universe wants. Otherwise, the mornings before summer dawn would not be made so fine. The Bengal tiger would not be fashioned so miraculously well. The poor women at the fountain are laughing together between the suffering they have known and the awfulness in their future, smiling and laughing while somebody in their village is very sick. There is laughter every day in the terrible streets of Calcutta, and the women laugh in the cages of Bombay. If we deny our happiness, resist our satisfaction, we lessen the importance of their deprivation. We must risk delight. We can do without pleasure, but not without delight, not enjoyment. We must have the stubbornness to accept our gladness in the ruthless furnace of this world. To make injustice the only measure of our attention is to praise the devil. If the locomotive of the Lord runs us down, we should give thanks that the end had magnitude. We must admit that there will be music despite everything. We stand at the prow again of a small ship anchored late at night in a tiny port overlooking the sleeping island. The waterfront is 3 shuttered cafes and 1 naked light burning. To hear the faint sound of oars in the silence as a rowboat comes slowly out and then goes back is truly worth all the years of sorrow that will come. Could we close the middle set of windows, please? So, I want to share with you this beautiful statement by Joanna Macy. It's 8 minutes, and see how it goes. I think I can get it to work. This was at Spirit Rock about 5 years ago.
My best friend, Dugu Chögyal Rinpoche, gave me this teaching. It's from the Kala Chakra Tantra, and it's about the emergence of the kingdom of Shambhala. And in this particular interpretation by my friend from Tashijong, the term arises Shambhala warriors. And it's obvious that's a metaphor for the bodhisattva. So as we're looking to how do we be bodhisattvas, this has been a big help to me. Okay.
I turned the computer around. You can see her small if you want.
There comes a time when all life on earth is in danger. In this time, great powers have arisen, barbarian powers. And although they waste their wealth in preparations to annihilate each other, they have much in common. And among the things they have in common are weapons of unfathomable death and devastation, and technologies that lay waste the world. And it is just in this time, when the future of all beings seems to hang by the frailest of threads, that the kingdom of Shambhala emerges. Now you can't go there because it's not a place. It exists in the hearts and minds of the Shambhala warriors. And actually, you can't tell a Shambhala warrior by looking at her or him, because there are no uniforms, no insignia, no banners to declare what side you're on, no barricades behind which you can rest and regroup or stand to threaten the enemy, not even any home turf, because always and ever you just have the terrain of the barbarian powers to move across. Now the time has come, he said, when great courage is required of the Shambhala warriors. Moral courage and physical courage. because they're going to go into the very center of the barbarian powers to dismantle their weapons. And weapons in every sense of the word. They're going to go into the pits where the armaments are made and where they're deployed, also going into the corridors of power where the decisions are made, and dismantle those weapons too. Now he said, Joanna, mark this. The Shambhala warriors know that they can dismantle these weapons because they are mano maya. That means mind-made. They are made by the human mind, so they can be unmade by the human mind. Because these instruments of death are not visited upon us by some extraterrestrial force or some satanic deity or some unalterable predestined fate, but they arise from our choices, from our lifestyles. Actually, he didn't say the word lifestyle. Our choices, our habits, our relationships. So these dangers arise, are manomaya, mind-made. So they can be unmade by the human mind. And so he said, now is the time.
Oh, I know what's happening. Interesting. Okay, sorry. I forgot. I thought she was pausing for a long time there.
When the Shambhala warriors go into training, or you want to say, how do they train? And he said they train in the use of two weapons. And actually, he did say the word weapons, though I think you might prefer to say tools or implements or resources. That's what he said. What are they, I asked. And he held up his hands the way the lamas hold the ritual objects in the great dances of his people. And he said one is compassion, and the other is insight into the radical interdependence of all phenomena. And you need both. One is not enough. You need the compassion because that provides the fuel to move you out to where you need to go to do what you need to do. And what it boils down to is not being afraid of the suffering of our world. And when you're not afraid of the pain, then nothing can stop you, you know. But by itself, that's so hot, that fuel. Ooh, that can burn you out. And so you need the other. You need that insight into the radical interexistence of all things. And with that, you know, that this is not a battle between the good guys and the bad guys, but that the line between good and evil runs through the landscape of every human heart. And that we are so interwoven in the web of existence that even the smallest act with clear intention has repercussions through the web that you can't begin to see, let alone measure. But that, while essential, is a little cool, he said. Little cool, feel a little abstract, and so you need the heat of the compassion. And as he said that, my mind flashed to in the puja hall, the monks chanting, and often as not, they're chanting with moving hand gestures. You've seen them probably in person or on film. And often as not, they're dancing the interplay between compassion and wisdom.
This is the first time I've seen this rendition, heard it. There's another piece that certainly when she shared it here, sitting here 2 weeks ago, she added that she was very excited about this encounter with this teacher, and she went back to the village in India, northern India, and her son was visiting, her son Jack, and she told him, and she said that Jack said, "So did he tell you how it turns out?" And she said, "Well, no, and I wouldn't have believed any of it if he told me how it turned out." And then she got kind of fierce, and she got kind of fierce here and said, "And don't you believe anybody who says they know how it's going to turn out? Because we don't know." Right? It's like hurricanes. You think it's going to hit here, and it turns out it goes 100 miles to the west. We don't know. However, we do know that we can become vastly more compassionate, and also that we can cultivate radical equanimity, which we certainly need. And how's the time? Can't tell. Go away. Okay, I'm rich in time, 20 minutes. So I want to do a guided meditation. I want you to sit comfortably. And to come into contact with this precious one-of-a-kind ever bodies. Right? There's never been a you before, nor will there ever be another. And you are, I guess, the sensations in your body. Notice how real they are, how tingly, vibraty, how warm and cool. This is the body that you inhabit. Amazing to think that it started as a single sperm and an egg. But it did survive, and it got implanted in a uterus, and a woman carried you for 9 months, and then you were born. And there was a moment when your mother could no longer breathe for you, and you had to breathe, and every single one of us made that transition where we took that first kind of searing breath. And we've been breathing autonomously ever since. So honor that reality of that life and this breathing, that awareness. Fully dive into this birth, this incarnation. And you can notice that this body, this consciousness meets sound and hearing happens. And if your eyes were open, there would be seeing. If there was something to taste, there would be tasting. And if the right particles or chemicals crossed the membranes, there would be scent. And there's that mysterious capacity that we call thoughts and memories and plans, the past and future, which occur in mind. Joanna talked about the human world, which is manomaya, it's mind-made. And it's with the mind that we create the past. Doesn't mean nothing ever happened, but our experience of past always occurs in this present moment. And the future doesn't exist. It never exists. It's always this moment. So what are you really? Maybe take a moment to think of the story of your past, the cherished story of your childhood, and the challenges, the difficulties, the strengths, the pleasures. Maybe take a moment to be grateful for who you've become in response to the challenges of your childhood. It's a different way of thinking. Very often we go to victimhood. But I faced this and I survived, and look how wise I've become. Look how compassionate. And you have faced many difficulties, many losses, probably some deaths. Practice gratitude for how you have had the tools to grow and become wiser. How much more mature you are now than you ever were before, and how much you can continue to grow in this direction. At the beginning today, we took refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha. And that's a moment-by-moment practice as well. Refuge in that which is awake. There's something miraculous that knows these memories, these contemplations I'm suggesting. And these inner imaginings, these outer sounds, apparently outer sounds, they are as they are. This is the Dharma. And this life, this incarnation, this temporary home for consciousness is embedded in life, isn't it? It's part of the world, it's part of the planet. So if we are part of the earth, truly, if we are part of this living, breathing organism we call life on earth, how do we remember it? Perhaps it's through absolute intimacy. To be so awake, we can't deny it. This is in-breathing. This is out-breathing. This is hearing. And as we become more sensitive and more awake, we can become overwhelmed. We become identified with the separate self and its reactions to the world. And so there's a practice that comes to us from the Tibetans. It's very simple. To be aware of this breath, and to be aware of your heart, at the heart of your experience, your sweet, compassionate, caring heart. And remember that the elements of this heart are borrowed from the earth. It's kind of like an earth suit, so you can be here. And this is a practice to use when overwhelm is affecting us, when we're identifying with the sufferings of ourselves, of our loved ones, of the world. And we imagine, or we realize maybe, that this is the heart of the Buddha, or the heart of Kuan Yin, the heart of Mary, or some other archetypal figure that you would choose. And to realize that it's possible to encounter the suffering of the world, to feel it deeply, but not close down. To not hold on to it, to not identify with it. To realize this is the Dharma, this is the nature of life. And so as you breathe in, I invite you to think of the traumas of your lifetime, of your childhood. Breathe them into the heart and just let them go. Hear the beauty of these children playing outside. Breathing it in, letting it go. Any illnesses that you or friends or family are suffering, remembering that illness is not a mistake, it's not it's not as though some outside force, some deity is imposing it. Illness is normal. Illness is how we leave the body most times. So breathing in illness, your own and that of others, just let it go. You don't need to fix it, there's nothing to fix. We know that there is great suffering occurring on the earth all the time. On an average day, 150,000 human beings die. Breathing that in and letting it go. We're told by the media that at this moment there's a vast hurricane churning its way through Florida. Breathing it in, letting it go. Wishing all beings who are affected by it well. Grounding again in the life of your body in this moment. Around the world there are floods and famines and the particular madness of human beings, war. At this very moment, someone is sighting a rifle. Breathe it in. Any reactivity that comes up, breathe it in, let it go. You don't need to tense yourself up in response to the infinite dukkha of the world. It doesn't help. This is a time when there is more political instability in our country than there has been at some times, other times. Though there's always been plenty. And there's fear and wanting to control it. From this position of vast identification with the universe, breathe it in, into the heart, and just let it go. There's nothing to resist. Doesn't mean you can't act and be responsible and demonstrate if that's your way, or write letters, or be engaged. But in this moment, as you realize, what are you really? You are this infinite awareness in which all this occurs. Breathing it in. Breathing in what you think of as your insecurity, your depression, your sadness, your grief. Relinquish it to the vast, interconnected universe. Anything else that you worry about or that you toil about, your children or your parents, your sick parent, or if the mind is obsessing about something, don't deny it, the mind's obsessing. But recognize that it exists in this infinite vastness of an open heart. Breathing it in, letting it go. And in this openness of heart, why not wish this particular incarnation you think of as you well? Wish her or him well. I suppose her, him, they, however you think of this self. And then remembering that you sit in this room with others, and why not extend that wish to them? Remember, everyone here is a temporary manifestation of this mysterious presence. And then extending our loving kindness, our compassion out to everyone in this city, people in the hospitals, people celebrating birthdays, people who are dying today. To the people who are subject right now to the aftermath of earthquakes and the ongoing hurricane, or the famine, or the refugees. To those beings who are deluded and hoarding in a vast way, or deluded and being violent in their way of governing. Recognizing that in this open-heartedness there are no enemies. It's just us. So here we sit, breathing, one little node of consciousness in the vastness of the universe. I'm going to come around now and help 4 or 5 people up, and I invite you to help 4 or 5 more until everyone will be standing. But wait till someone comes and gives you a little assistance. And then when we're all up, let's just mill around a little bit and meet someone, make eye contact and bow to them. Recognizing that you're bowing to yourself. And let's not start talking, okay? Let's bow to each other. Meeting yourself in a different form. Pamela. And when you've bowed a few times, let's move to a big circle. You're going to sing? Oh, thank you. I forgot the microphone. It's a good thing you reminded me. Yes. Well, I heard you guys having fun outside. You did? Good. Well, what you looking at?
Are you talking and it's just
How can you tell? Most people don't notice that. That was very smart of you.
I follow the voice.
I see. Can I hold your hand? Wow, let me see. Get that again. You have a gold tooth. That's pretty cool. Brush and floss. A lot. It's very important. That and do yoga. When you get old like me, you won't be so stiff. So, can I hold your hand now? Now that you show me your tooth? Do you have any teeth to show me? Just ordinary teeth? She had a missing tooth, I know. So, we get to hold hands. You remember the first time you held hands with someone and it was exciting? I do. It was Tisha Sage in high school. Riding the bus, we were holding hands. You can communicate so much with a little squeeze. It's like, I'm here. Are you there? Yeah, I'm here. So it's still the same, isn't it? We can use these precious bodies to communicate. I'm here and I'm glad to hold your hand. And on the other side, I'm here and I'm glad to hold your hand. It's a privilege, isn't it? And since these minds, manomaya, mind-made, we can cultivate these minds to do particular things. We could cultivate them to do harm, or we could cultivate them to bless. So how would you bless the person on your right? What would you wish them? Give their hand a little squeeze. And the same with the person on your left, another little squeeze. And you can know that the person on your left is wishing you well, as is the person on your right. You want to sing? It's pretty soon? Okay. So, I guess it's time to sing. Who's these two? Oh, great. You're together. You ready? Here we go. Beings be happy. May all beings be happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you. Wow. Huh. Uh-oh, those are video game figures, I can see them. So, now comes that moment when everyone gets to take a deep breath. Let's think of what your wish would be for all life. Let's clarify that in our hearts, and then take a deep breath in, and then on the count, the usual count, everyone in the room gets to blow out the candle. Not yet, not yet. Have to count. Oh! Well, that was it. Yay, we got the candle out. Let's do an imaginary blow all together. 1, 2, 3, blow. There, that feels completion. So please come and join us for some goodies, and there's always enough. And I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you to those of you who joined us on the net. How come